All right, let's talk about a story you probably think you know inside and out: The Lion and the Mouse. But what if I told you it's not just some kid's fable? We're going to treat it like a serious case study, a deep dive into how power, mercy, and promises really work. So here's how we're going to break it down. We've got 5 parts, kind of like 5 acts in a play. And each one, well, it peels back another layer of what makes this story so powerful. Okay, first up, the setup. Every great story needs to set the stage, right? And this one, it kicks things off by showing us this just massive, almost ridiculous imbalance of power out there on the savannah. So, in one corner, you've got Leo. And we're not talking about just any lion. This guy is the king. His roar can literally shake the leaves off the trees. And in the other corner, we have Milo, a tiny little mouse who's so small you'd barely even notice him. I mean, you couldn't get a bigger contrast if you tried. So the scene is just totally calm. Leo's there, this powerhouse, but he's asleep. He has no idea there's this tiny creature scurrying around nearby. And that quiet, that peace, it's the perfect calm before the storm. Something's about to break it. All right, next section. This is where it all kicks off, the inciting incident, as they say. It's that one little accidental moment that sets everything in motion, and I mean everything. And boing, there it is, one clumsy little hop. That's all it takes. In a split second, the piece is just shattered. And suddenly these two characters, the massive king and the tiny mouse, are face to face. It's the ultimate showdown between immense power and, well, zero power. And Leo's reaction? It's exactly what you'd think. Bam, instant raw power. He slams his paw down, trapping this poor trembling mouse. And honestly, this should be it, right? Story over, game, set, match. But then Milo does something kind of crazy. Out of pure desperation, he makes a promise. And from where Leo is sitting, or, standing, this promise is just completely ridiculous. And you've got to pay attention to the lion's laugh here. It's so important. He's not just laughing because it's funny, it's pure arrogance. He's completely underestimating the little guy. To him, this promise isn't a real deal. It's a joke. He can't even imagine a world where he would ever need help from a mouse. No way. And this is the key. The absolute key. He lets Milo go, but not because he's being noble or compassionate. Nope, he just thinks it's hilarious, and he's in a good mood. It's this casual, offhand act of mercy, this merciful miscalculation, if you will, that kicks off the whole rest of the story. He basically just created a debt, and he has absolutely no clue. Okay, so let's fast forward a bit. We're getting to the good part now, the climax, and this is where the tables are about to get turned in a big way. It really is wild how fast things can change, isn't it? We're talking just a few days. That's all that separates that moment of the promise from, bam, the trap. And just like that, the whole dynamic flips. The all-powerful king is now completely helpless. And think about the trap itself for a second. What's so clever about it is that it makes all of Leo's power totally useless. His strength, his roar, his giant claws, none of it matters. He's not beaten by a bigger animal. He's beaten by a bunch of ropes, a system that he just can't brute force his way out of. And that brings us to the big turning point. This is the moment the tiniest character in our story becomes the most important one. It's a perfect example of how power isn't always about being the biggest or the strongest. Now, remember how Leo just laughed at Milo? Well, Milo does the complete opposite. He hears that roar, he knows it's a cry for help, and this is the important part, he decides to do something. He doesn't just ignore it, he runs toward the danger. And here you see it. It's a perfect demonstration of how a different type of power can win the day. Leo's brute strength was useless, right? But Milo's approach, small, careful, and just plain persistent, is what actually works. Those tiny teeth, something you'd think of as a weakness, turn out to be the perfect tool for the job. This right here, this is Leo's big aha moment. He doesn't just say thanks. He actually admits he was wrong. He finally gets it. He understands that you can't measure someone's worth by their size. And that promise he thought was so funny, well, it just saved his skin. Okay, so we've seen the whole story unfold, but what's really going on under the hood here? What's the engine that makes this whole fable work so well? Let's dig in and deconstruct it. Really, when you get right down to it, this is a story about one simple idea: reciprocity. What goes around comes around. The whole story is built on this idea that if you put a good deed out into the world, it'll come back to you, often when you least expect it. Let's actually look at I guess you could call it the economics of kindness here. It makes the lesson so much clearer. For the lion, letting the mouse go cost him what? Nothing. It was just a decision he made on a whim. But to the mouse, that decision was worth everything. It was his life. Then, flip it around. For the mouse to free the lion, that took a lot of work, a lot of risk. But for the lion, again, the value was life itself. And that's the big takeaway, isn't it? An act of kindness that costs you next to nothing can be absolutely priceless to someone else. So, at the end of the day, the moral here isn't just, be nice. It's deeper than that. It's almost a strategic lesson about life. You just never ever know which tiny, seemingly meaningless action is going to start a ripple effect that comes back to you in a huge way down the road. I mean, think about it. We're still talking about this story more than 2,500 years later. That's incredible. And the reason it's stuck around for so long is because its core message, this truth about kindness and paying it forward, it's just a universal part of being human. And really, that's the question this ancient tale leaves us with, isn't it? It kind of makes you look around and second guess your own ideas about who has power and what's valuable. It makes you wonder, whose tiny promise are you underestimating right now? What amazing potential is hiding in those small moments of kindness that we see every single day?